Good day. Today I'm going to review the 10 references of the book of John Duns Scotus, which is the philosophical writing, particularly to his topic about the man's natural knowledge of God. To Brunio Logino and Paulo Santori. The philosophical question on logic in the book is how God's will affects human understanding. The author claims that God's will is the most important part of understanding logic and ethics. The following 3 points support this claim. First, Don Scotus' ideas challenge traditional views. And the second, his ideas can promote the common good. And the third, he values will more than intellect. The key strength of the book's argument is that it offers a new view on how voluntarism affects ethics. On the other hand, the weakness in the book's argument is that it may not consider modern logical theories. Upon reading this book, I have come to see that theology and logic can provide important insights and morality. In view of the vast literature on logic, the book's argument can be enhanced by adding modern examples of voluntarism and ethics. To Deza and Ernesto, the philosophical question on logic in the book is if logic can be fully based on formal system. The author claims that logic needs more than just formal systems. The following 3 points support this claim. First, showing logic depends on basic assumptions. And the second, stating formal system can't cover all logic. And the third, using philosophy to explain logic better. The key strength of the book's argument is how it links formal logic and philosophy. On the other hand, the book's weakness is that it may focus too much on philosophy and less on practical use. Upon reading this book, I have come to see that logic is closely linked to philosophy. In view of vast literature on logic, the book's argument can be enhanced by including recent work in formal logic and philosophy. To Donnie Stephen, the author says that logical principles might change depending on the context. The book supports this by showing logic varies by culture. Second, noting context affects logic. And the third, giving historical examples on different logic. The book's strength is in showing how logic changes across cultures in history. The book's weakness is that it might not explain how to use different logical principles in practice. After reading this book, I see that logic depends on cultural and historical factors. The book could be improved by adding more recent research on applying different logic systems. To Coscalo Martina, the book asks if logic is always the same or if it changes. The author says that logic has both fixed rules and different views. The book supports this by first showing logic follows certain rules. The second, noting people can interpret logic differently. And the third, explaining how context affects logic. The book's strength is in mixing fixed rules with different views. The book's weakness is that it might not cover all possible views and context. After reading this book, I see that logic has both set rules and personal opinions. The book could be better by adding more examples of how different contexts affect logic. To Konka Slomer, Jersey, the philosophical question on logic in the book is whether logic is universal or depends on context. The author claims that logic depends on context and varies with different systems. The book supports this with 3 points. First, logic is shaped by culture. And the second, different fields use different logic. And the third, context influences reasoning. The book's case strength it is clear examples showing how context affects logic. The book's main weakness is its brief discussion on universal logic principle. After reading the book, I see that context important for logical reasoning. The book could be improved by adding more examples of universal logic principles and how they interact with context. To Mancini Guy, the philosophical question on logic in the book is whether logic is objective or influenced by subjective factors. The author claims that logic is influenced by subjective factors. The book supports this with 3 points. First, personal beliefs shape logic. And the second, culture affects logic. And the third, different societies use different logic. The case strength of the book is its clear examples of how subjective factors affects logic. The main weakness is that it does not explore objective effects of logic. After reading this book, I see that subjective factors affect logical reasoning. The book can be improved by discussing more about objective elements of logic and the rule. To Spink Cassie, the philosophical question on logic in the book is whether logic is universal or a human construct. The author claims that logic is a human construct. The book supports this with 3 points. First, logic changes with culture. And the second, history affects logic. And the third, personal experiences shape logic. The case strength of the book is its examples showing how context changes logic. The main weakness is that it does not explore universal aspect of logic. After reading this book, I see that logic influenced by human factors and context. The book can be improved by discussing universal principles of logic and how they interact with human factors. To Teropia Anna, the philosophical question on logic in the book is whether logic is fixed or can change. The author claims that logic can change based on context. The book supports this with 3 points. First, logic varies by culture. Second, history affects logic. And the third, context changes logic rules. The case strength of the book is its clear examples of changing logic. The main weakness is that it does not explore fixed logic. After reading this book, I see that logic can vary with context. The book can be improved by discussing fixed principles of logic and the rule and different contexts. To William Thomas, the philosophical question on logic in the book is whether logic is universal or changes with context. The author claims that logic changes with context. The book supports this with 3 points. First, logic differs by culture. Second, history shapes logic. And the third, personal views affects logic. The case strength of the book is its clear examples of how context changes logic. The main weakness is that it does not examine universal elements of logic. After reading this book, I see that context affects how logic works. The book can be improved by discussing universal principles of logic and their rule in different contexts. And the last, to Walter Allen, The philosophical question on logic in the book is whether logic is based on universal principles or individual reasoning. The author claims that logic is based on universal principle. The book supports this with 3 points. First, universal principles guide logic. Second, logic flows consistent rules. And the third, these principles apply everywhere. The key strength of the book is its clear explanation of universal logic principles. However, the main weakness is that it does not discuss individual reasoning and logic. Upon reading this book, I see that logic relies on universal principles, and the book can be improved by including how individual reasoning affects on logic. And that will be all for the review of the 10 references. Thank you and God bless.